How does a restaurant go from one location in Clearwater, Florida to having its own airline, late night show, casino, hotel, magazine, 420 locations in 42 states and 29 countries in a span of 40 years with an initial investment of just $140,000? Well, it certainly wouldn't be rounding up 5 of your best friends to pitch in who didn't have any restaurant experience and say to hell with it, right? Well, think again. This is the insane story of how Hooters defied the odds and managed to become an internationally recognizable brand. How it all started. Hooters was started by 6 friends, Lynn, Jill, Ed, Billy, Ken, and Dennis. They were semi-successful businessmen who one day was playing parcheesi at the home for the visually offensive. Desiring the finer things in life, they came up with the half-baked idea to open up a restaurant that they couldn't get kicked out of, and on April 1st, 1983, Hooters was officially formed. The date was an April Fool's Day joke because even they believed that their restaurant would inevitably fail. Everything was stacked against them. None of them had any experience running a restaurant, evidenced by them attempting to sell alcohol before they received their liquor license and having to call up another friend to teach them how to light up the fryers. They also built their first location on a site that had seen many businesses fail, so much so that the Hooters 6 built a small graveyard at the front of the door for each that had come and gone before them. But due to their savviness and marketing angle, they attracted loyal customers and eventually Hugh Connerty's attention. Growth, phase, and buyouts. In 1984, while Hugh was scouting locations for a steakhouse restaurant, he stumbled into a Hooters and thought the place was fun and had lots of potential. Using a napkin, he made an offer to buy the rights to Hooters from the original Hooters 6 for $300,000. They would continue to own the trademark and get 3 cents on every dollar. They would also keep the rights to build more locations in select areas. Beginning in 1985, Hugh expanded Hooters to several other cities in the Southeast. In need for more capital, he approached Bob Brooks, an uber-successful businessman that owned Naturally Fresh, a food service company that had acquired several big chains. Bob gave Hugh the loans he asked for. 3 years later, Bob called on the loan, and when Hugh couldn't pay, Bob took over the development rights. A lender will call a loan if the borrower's credit has deteriorated, the borrower's collateral has lost value, or if the lender is worried about the borrower's future ability to pay. Hugh wasn't left with nothing. He at least retained ownership of Hooters restaurants in Jacksonville and Tallahassee. Internal drama. Bob becoming more hands-on stabilized and brought more resources. He pushed Hooters into new states, which meant the original founders' 3%, now incorporated under Hooters Inc., generated more money. But disagreements started surfacing when Bob's entity, Hooters of America, started ordering large quantities of items from Bob's other business, Naturally Fresh. Essentially, you had one entity based out of Atlanta that had the money and didn't want to be told what to do, Bob's Hooters of America, and the founders based out of Clearwater, Florida, Hooters Inc., whose trademark ownership restricted what was allowed and what wasn't under the Hooters name. Clearwater thought Atlanta had no soul and didn't understand the subtleties. To the founders, Hooters was a work of art, naughty but not too naughty, an elaborate PG-13 joke, and Bob just didn't get it. Now, to be fair, buyer's remorse certainly could have been a factor as the founders sold a significant amount of ownership after just a year of being in business. They also began to take themselves more seriously after seeing their baby grow. In 1994, Bob pounced at Lynn's offer to sell his stake in Hooters Inc., but the 5 other founders took Bob to court, where in 1995, a Florida judge blocked the sale because under the original agreement, the founders had the right to first refusal to buy Lynn's shares, which they did, allowing them to retain ownership. External drama. That same year, both entities put their differences aside to unite against a common enemy, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. The federal agency filed a complaint saying the exclusive employment of women as waitresses discriminated against men. Hooters counterattacked by dressing up a restaurant manager in a Hooters girl outfit and plastered him on billboards and ads with the anti-EEOC message, "Washington, get a grip." This sparked the Hooters March, which led to the EEOC dropping the complaint. However, the celebration was short-lived as internal conflicts resumed almost immediately. Turning the corner. Even though there were several more battles between Bob and the founders, by the turn of the millennium, they began to develop respect for one another. Ed said there was friendship despite all the fighting, and we had to hand it to Bob. He put his money where his mouth was. In 2001, as part of a settlement, the founders sold Brooks the Hooters trademark for $60 million. They retained the rights to the Tampa Bay and Chicago territories, plus Manhattan. Before Bob died of a heart attack on July 15, 2006, his leadership expanded the brand to more than 425 stores worldwide. Final thoughts. Hooters will always be remembered for being a company that wasn't scared to push the boundaries. They worked hard and played hard. They fought internally, but when threatened externally, they united. They have been in a cultural war since the beginning and have always found a way to come out on top. Will their family-friendly concept Hoots work out? Time will tell. So what can you take away from this story? The truth is, if you knew everything that you would go through, chances are you will never decide to start. Sometimes it comes down to being naive enough to begin and relentless enough to not stop. Enjoying the journey is to enjoy life itself. Consider subscribing for more stories about business, politics, and money. I think you'll really like one of these two. The previews are playing below the thumbnails. See you in the next one. Ground Zero. Today, every first world citizen knows what this is, but this looked like this back in 1914. Western Union, the company we know today for facilitating transfers to underbanked people overseas, actually created America's first version of the credit card as a way to defer payments on bills. Then in 1920, the oil companies